Are you confused and overwhelmed about your role in all the craziness that is being a dad? Are you struggling to create the life you hope for? Are you looking for other dads to share your struggles and your triumphs? Or do you just need help waking up in the morning? This is the Wake Up Dad Show.
Hey Dad, and welcome to another episode of the Wake Up Dad Show. I'm Scott Batcher.
And I'm Evan Hill, and we are the co-hosts of the Wake Up Dad Show.
In this episode, we explore the 5 P's of dadhood: purpose, power, parenting, providing, and passion. On today's episode, we're going to talk about what it's like to be the Rock. The good, the bad, and the ugly. What's the name of that movie star, The Rock? What's his name?
Yeah. I was just thinking that, is it Dwayne?
Dwayne, yes, it's Dwayne something. That's not what we're talking about. Just in case you're wondering.
We're not talking about him.
No, we're not talking about him. Not at all. I think he is a dad, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about being a movie star or a guy with pecs so big that you can poke your eye out with them. Nothing like that. We're talking about being the rock for your family. And like I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly of that, and what that means as a dad, because it's pretty much a stereotypical role in today's world and for generations past, to be the rock of the family as a dad, to be the man, to be the guy, to be the person that everyone can depend on, who never breaks down and who always keeps going and who is literally that rock. You know, that's the whole idea behind the name of it, isn't it? It doesn't fall apart, doesn't crush and crumble under the pressure, and is always there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I will speak for myself, but nobody told me that going into being a dad. However, I knew that was my role, which I find interesting. It's one of those things that's passed down from generation to generation, although it's not really talked about. It's expected. And what about you, Scott?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, I didn't really think about it. And really, I guess, thinking about it now, it probably extends out even more to just being a man. And, you know, if you're in a relationship before kids, you're still expected to be the rock. It's not strictly a dad thing, although then when a dadhood comes along, it's even more expected that you're going to be that guiding force, that never-ending, that stable person and that rock for the whole family then, and not just for yourself or your partner, but for the whole family.
Yeah, and we wanted to talk about a few of the, well, as Scott put it, the good, the bad, and the ugly with that stereotype. What's the... we're going to talk about it, some positives as well. But there's certainly some things that are some negatives, some things that perhaps could be leading men to be living shorter lives, and perhaps lives that they may not want to actually live. And what I mean by that is, and as we talk about it, I think it'll unfold, and maybe the dads on the call can agree. But why don't we just get into it, actually? So one of the first ones is really putting our emotions aside, not really addressing or communicating our feelings and our fears and what's going on for us, but rather tucking them away more as a protection for the family, maybe from not wanting to stress your partner if you are living with somebody. But I can speak for myself, like, you know, I knew that my wife had a lot of pressures, a lot of challenges and stresses, and I didn't want to worry her with all my concerns and stresses. I wanted to make it seem like everything was just trucking along and she didn't need to stress about anything else. But meanwhile, inside, I really needed her support. And it would have helped me a lot to have talked through these things and, communicated better and, and let some of those emotions move rather than holding them in and not expressing them. So definitely one of them is being the rock. You said it pre-show, Scott, I think really well, is having a kind of a superficial level of expression that it's like, how you doing? Like, good, everything's good. Meanwhile, underneath all that, you could be going through major challenges with marriage or with your career, personal stuff, health things, and really not letting anybody in. And I think that that's detrimental to dads and really being healthy.
Yeah,
Anything to add to that?
There's a bit of a saying over here in Australia, and maybe there's a Canadian saying that I'm forgetting about. She'll be right, mate. And it's sort of like that whole, that's superficial. Don't let it cut too deep. Don't show your emotions too much. Don't show any, what's the word I'm looking for? Vulnerability, right? Because if you show vulnerability, then it's ridiculous. It is an absolutely ridiculous thing that we do as men in general, and especially as dads when it comes to the kids, is to not show this vulnerability for fear of it showing that we're not real men, when in reality it's the exact opposite. Like, literally could not get more opposite. And if you haven't gone back and listened to the show on vulnerability, go and have a listen back, about 5-6 episodes. An interview I did with Jason McKenzie on vulnerability. It's a fantastic episode. But another thing that people say over here, and I'm not sure if they say it in Canada, you might be able to back me up on this one, is, if you are asking somebody, how you doing? Oh, not too bad. Right? And when I hear that, I just cringe, because I'm like, not too bad. Huh. That means it's bad.
Yeah.
But it's not too bad. Yeah. Right? Oh, it's not too bad. It's like, wow, that's how things, that's not good. That's not good at all. Like, good's not even in there. It's bad. It's just not too bad that I'm going to go and do something really bad. And so, I think even in our language that we use, it's important for us to express ourselves in a better way. And getting back to that superficial emotions, like, I think a lot of us men will really, really create that superficial emotion around our health and not be vulnerable enough to really get into a place of where is our health? Like, really, where is it? Because I hate to say it, but dudes, most people that are probably listening to this right now, your health is nowhere near where it should be. And if that's the case, it's about owning up and stepping up, being a man, like being a real man, being a real rock, stepping up and doing something about your damn health. And for me, I'll give you a personal example. It was around money. And this, goes back a little bit now, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And my kid wasn't sleeping for about 2 years. And I was a walking zombie. I literally could not. I've talked about this a few times on some of these episodes. I couldn't do. It was a struggle for me to stay awake long enough to drive to work. I'd be falling asleep at the wheel. I don't know how I didn't kill myself driving to work in the mornings. I have a 25-minute drive on the highway, and so things were tough. But one of the toughest parts was my practice wasn't going well. I didn't have any energy to put into it. Money was really tight and stressful. But I was a rock. I didn't want to tell my wife that things were as bad as they were, and that deep down I was yearning for her to go back to work because she had a good job, but she was off with the kid, and I really wanted her to be able to do that. But part of me was like, oh man, we're really struggling here financially. And But, I didn't say anything. I was the quote-unquote rock, and it really, really hurt me for a long period of time, and it took me a long time to get over that. And so, I think health and money are probably two of the biggest things that us as dads really have our superficial emotional hats on. And guys, it's time to get your forehead burned from the sun, take your hat off, and do something about it. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ev?
Yeah, I do. And I'm thinking about the word vulnerability, and I'll ask the listeners out there, when you hear vulnerability, do you think strength or weakness? And Scott talked about it being, definitely a strength. And I think that growing up, certainly wasn't taught it to be a strength. It was, showing emotions was something that I don't know where I learned it, whether it was the playground or where. It wasn't something that my dad, I don't think, instilled in me, but somewhere along the lines I learned to, that expressing emotions as a man was not, socially the thing to be done. And so it really, my point is that it falls along the lines of vulnerability being a weakness. And then if you're so weak that you can't keep your emotions together, like, you shouldn't even be out of the house type thing. Like, what's wrong with you? And it's with vulnerability and weakness being connected in people's minds, they could actually stop themselves from doing other things that make them feel vulnerable because they think it's weak, like going to get help, like going to talk to somebody if they need help, that way, or going to their medical doctor, or going and getting checked out with, in chiropractic, if they're like dealing with something that chiropractic can help them with. Like, but my point is like you said, like taking care of yourself, and from a health perspective, and asking for help in that area, that can be a sign of vulnerability that we don't know, and that being connected to weakness. So then there's actually no progress, and actually, we end up going downhill even more because we're not reaching out for help. And the reality is that we're human beings. We have emotions. We don't know it all. We need help. We will do a lot better when we're asking for help and we're seeking answers. And women have got this down. They're way more advanced than we are in this area. They don't have this conversation. Yeah.
Shh. Did you just say that?
Yeah. I know.
Live?
Did I just say that?
What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Wow.
You just opened a kettle of fish there. What are you doing?
Oh,
no.
All right.
You're very
please
right.
don't cancel your subscription to our show. I'd feel very vulnerable if you were to do that. I'd feel like a failure. And I certainly wouldn't reach out and ask for help. No.
Of course not.
But really, like,
go ahead.
Women,
yeah,
they'll like, they get the slightest little pain, and and they go and they look for an answer, and they're not concerned about how that looks, whether that's the weakness, or they'll go ask their friend for, talk about it with their friend, and the friend says, "Oh, I do this." "Oh, you do? Where do you do that from?" And the next thing you know, your wife is off to an appointment with someone that someone told them about. Meanwhile, I'm over in the corner there, dealing with all my problems, and I'm trying to figure it all out all by myself. And
you know what you're saying? You do. Your friend's going, "How you going?" And you go, "Not too bad." And that's what we do. That's.
And how you doing?
Yeah, good.
Oh, not too bad.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Yep.
Good.
Busy.
Yep.
Busy.
And you can totally read between the lines too, right? It's like, "So, how's your job going?" It's going. It's like, wow. They're like, "Yeah, only 20 years to retirement." Okay.
Only 20
There
years,
might be a
6
story
months,
behind
4
that.
weeks,
You
and
think
3
that?
days.
Do you think that Dad's happy? Huh?
Yeah. And guys,
So
I'll throw out a little, I guess, I don't know, I'll call it a piece of advice or something. But I mean, it might be too big of a step to actually go and specifically ask for help. But guys, there are so many resources out there for help these days. You can go online and ask for help. You don't have to ask somebody physically in person, although I do think that's probably the best way to do it. But if you're not ready for that step, go online. Find podcasts like this.
yeah,
There's so many out there that you can start listening to, start become part of a community, or just strictly listening to and taking on some of the advice. So I mean, I'll give ourselves a shout out and say, listen, if you can think of a dad who needs to hear this, then please share this episode with them, because we've got a big mission here at Wake Up Dad to really make an impact on the dads of the whole planet. We were just looking at the stats pre-show, and we're in 38 countries now, so pretty cool. Like it's expanding, it's getting there. So keep sharing, keep listening, and let us know how things are going, because that's where we get our juice from.
yeah. And a story came to mind as you were talking, Scott, and that is, being on the other side of what I would say the hardest times so far in my life, and having gone through those, the challenges of early years of kids, and financial stresses and all that stuff, and being able to get out on the other end of it above ground. And now, I talk about openly the challenges that I had, and it's amazing how dads reciprocate. And you may be the dad that has to go first. You may be the dad that says, you know what, when someone says, how's it going? It's like, you know what, I wouldn't necessarily do this to everybody, but there's certain friends where, if I get together with them, I'll say, I'll talk about some of the challenges that are going on, and it really makes a big difference in how I feel, to know there's someone else. It was interesting when I started telling people what was going on. They're like, oh man, do I ever have a story for you? And then they tell me about, this one gentleman, a friend of mine, he's a police officer, and he went to a house, and a boy died. And the family was like a well-to-do family, and they got up in the morning, and the son was dead in his bed, and he was like 8 years old. And he had this friend of mine, the police officer, had to go to the house and deal with this case. And he went home, and he's got two young girls, ages around 6 and 8 years old. And he had traumatic stress afterwards, post-traumatic stress disorder. He didn't know what was going on, and it was ruining his life. He was trying to suppress it with alcohol. He couldn't. He would sit inside of his kids' bedrooms, and just sit there. And he was afraid to leave them alone, sleeping, and just really bizarre behavior for him, and crying all the time. And he didn't tell anybody for so long. It was like 6 months. And he said he nearly killed himself. He lost his body. He put on tons of weight, depressed, just crying all the time, just total despair. And then he started to reach out, and he was actually, because in the police force, he wasn't taken seriously, and he was told to be a man. And it saddens me that this is a cultural thing, and he had to fight for it. He eventually fought for it, and he ended up getting help, and he got time off, and he was able to heal himself through talking to people. So it's so important. It's an extreme case, but I don't think it's that rare. And so it's really important for us to take that time and assess how we're doing. When someone asks, and actually one of the episodes coming up with Chris Cumby, he talked about this thing called asking. When someone asks you, how are you, you really check in and evaluate, how am I? And it's okay to say, you know what, stressful day. Kids are like a bit crazy, and you'll be amazed what happens when you start to just share a little bit, and how it just really, like, the person relates and you can move on. So anything to add to that, Scott?
The one thing I would add is if it's the checkout girl at the grocery store, might not be the right place to do it. Right? So, people ask all the time, how you going or how you doing or whatever. And, you choose your time. I think the key that I was trying to say is to let it out, to de-stress, to be vulnerable, to talk to somebody, and really, your partner would probably be the best person, really, because that is such a way of connection, to create better connection and passion within your marriage, is to actually open up about those things with your partner. Because we're back to the whole topic of the show, is being the rock, is, we typically don't want to stress our partners out with that. But I think, as I've mentioned earlier, they're superior beings. So they know when there's shit wrong with us. It's just when we don't tell them, it gets them more stressed, because they know. They're like, well, what's wrong with you? I know there's something. And then we're like, oh, not too bad. We're good. And just to open up and talk about it, it can literally only take 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. And I've been working on that more and more in my relationship in the last year or two. And what a freaking difference it makes. Like,
oh, massive.
It is so enormously unbelievable to be able to do that. Maybe nothing gets done, nothing gets said. Maybe it's just a hug, or it's just okay. Just like when they dump their stuff on us, it's not that they want us to fix it. It's just getting it out, just unloading and being heard for 2 or 3 minutes makes such an enormous difference. So, get together with your buddies. That's another reason I think we're going to do an episode like about the man cave or something like that. But back to being the rock is one of the other things that we'd mentioned that we will dive a little bit into, is this idea of isolation. And when we're I think we've sort of ticked a few of the boxes that we said we were going to talk about all in one. But the isolation is a big one, because when we feel like we can't express that emotion because it's being too vulnerable and being a sissy or a wuss or whatever, is that we socially isolate ourselves from our partners, from our friends, from our family, because we feel like there's nowhere for us to go to let that out. And I know a big thing that dads do is, when this stuff is happening, is they'll dig deep into something else. So, for example, have you found that you are staying a lot later at work? That you're like, oh my God, my work is, it's just so busy right now. I got to stay late and I got to do this, and this, or going to the gym too much. And I don't think that's a problem for a lot of dads. For most dads, it's probably the opposite of getting the time to go to the gym. But, whatever it is you dig deep into, whether it be work is probably the most common one for dads to just isolate themselves into, to feel like, because that's something that you have some control over. And so you just dive too deep into that and become the quote-unquote workaholic.
Yeah. That really catapults other major challenges into the forefront. Like, now there's going to be consequences with your children, less connection. There's going to be probably behavioral challenges. There's a lot of things that happen when father absenteeism is present in a household. So that can actually turn into a vicious cycle where now the desire to be home may even be less because things are falling apart. As we isolate from our partners, there's more distance. there's less connection, there's less intimacy. And if we are in the mindset of, I'm the rock, I'm not going to express how I feel and these sorts of things, we're going to have a hard time breaking that vicious cycle. And so what we're offering to dads is to actually have the conversation and talk about what's going on for real, and taking a chapter out of the woman's manual, really, because I feel like every day there'll be a time where Cheyenne lets me know what's going on and how she's feeling about it. And I used to be like thinking, okay, I've got my own stuff here and I don't want to have to fix anybody else. And you really said it great, Scott. They don't want to be fixed. They just want to be heard. They need, just like we do, someone just to listen. And sometimes, like you said, it's just as much as receiving a hug or don't worry, it's going to be okay. Or they may give you a strategy that you didn't think of. And Cheyenne does that all the time. Like, she sees things in a way that I don't. She has gifts that I don't. It's like, two people, two minds is better than one. And it's trusting that. It's trusting that, our spouse might have answers for us that could help us. And that's obviously something that we would have to be okay with and not see it as a weakness, but seeing it as a strength. And we talked about before in a previous episode about being a team family. And so rather than being a tennis player where it's just you against your opponent, it's like you're in a team and your wife is part of your team, or your significant other is part of your team. And
I like tennis.
Yeah.
You can play doubles tennis.
You could play doubles tennis.
What's
right.
Even better? Beach volleyball.
Beach volleyball.
Yeah.
Yes. Because you can play in doubles or in a bigger team.
I was thinking more like women's beach volleyball. It's just such a great sport.
Right.
You're not getting sport. Where I'm going with this. Anyway, keep going.
the fact that we can only play it for like 1 month of the year here.
I hadn't even thought of that.
Something else. You think you liked beach volleyball because of?
It's such a great sport.
It's a great sport. It has nothing to do with what is being what the females are wearing on the court.
Well, this is what I was getting at, and the joke is so over right now. So let's just move on.
All right, I think we're done milking that cow. Anyway, so isolation, it leads to a lot of things, and it's definitely a matter of taking a bit of risk and expressing ourselves, and I think that will break that cycle. That's what we're offering to the listeners. I know it's worked for me, so.
Yeah, so I mean, cluing up a little bit is, we talked a lot about the idea of superficial emotion and not expressing ourselves, not being vulnerable, putting ourselves last when it comes to our own health and our own, physical health, but also emotional health, idea of isolation. So there's a lot of things that the stereotypical rock, for all of its potential good things that could come from it in some circumstances, is a lot of things that we want to be aware of. Because, guys, I'm not saying go and become an absolute sissy and start complaining about every little tiny thing. You got to have some resiliency. We are men. We are, and we can get a lot of shit done. We can be freaking awesome, but we can do so much better. Like Ev said, two minds are better than one most of the time. So, we really just want to step up and understand that. I think, as far as being the rock, it is something that is and can be a very positive thing for our families, because then our families can feel like they can lean on us in hard times. But that doesn't mean that we don't need help as well, and that doesn't mean that we can't crumble under the pressure sometimes and allow that to happen, because what it'll do is it'll help us be even a stronger rock as time goes on, if we're able to decompress in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts, Ev, on today's show?
Yeah, like really what you just spoke about, and we're really highlighting the importance of our mental, emotional health and physical health, and that it's about putting that as a priority. And when isolating ourselves and not expressing ourselves is causing anxiety, depression, a reduction in our physical health performance, these sorts of things. That's the cue, and Scott made a good point there. Like, yes, we can get a lot of shit done. We are, we have the ability to, create and do tons, and really be, extraordinary at breadwinning and, bringing and creating a great life for our family. We have that potential. However, if we don't take care of our health, that potential will decrease. So for all of the practical listeners who are thinking bottom line is that, opening up and sharing and talking things through will increase your bottom line. I strongly believe that. How about you, Scott? Any closing remarks?
I already did my closing remarks. But I totally agree with what you said. What I'll say is, I think today's episode took a little bit of a side turn compared to what we talked about in the pre-show, but I think it did it in a really good way, and I think this one's going to hit home for a lot of dads out there. So I just really want to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, is that, if this hit home for you and you know of another dad out there, I really want you to make sure that you start sharing these episodes with people. I think it's your duty as a dad, if you are listening and you're getting value from this. I know there are other dads out there that need to hear this, and they just don't know that this is available. So if you just go ahead and share the episode, whether it be if you're listening on Facebook or whether you're listening in iTunes, wherever it is you're listening, it's very, very easy to share the episode with a friend or two or three. And I really urge you to do that, because I think it will make a massive difference in what we're trying to achieve here, to get dads to be, the amazing people that I think we really are, and, to change the world for the better.
Yeah. So I'm imagining all these rocks with smiley faces.
I like it. We could paint them yellow and put smiley faces.
Oh.
I like it.
Like an emoji.
Yeah.
Like a dad emoji. A dad emoji. We are going to create a dad emoji. Okay. I know a lot of rocks out there, and they don't have smiley faces on them.
Yeah, that's
so I bet
right.
if you send out this podcast, there's going to be some rocks out there, and they don't have smiley faces. They have the straight smile, like mouth, or the upside down mouth. And our goal is to make those smileys.
Fantastic. I think that's a great way to end. So, Dad, that's it for today's episode. This is Dr. Scott signing off.
And Dr. Ev.
Remember, dads, let's keep becoming better dads together.
Do you want to know more about the Wake Up Dad movement? Go to www.thewakeupdadshow.com to download any and all past issues of the show. Claim your free gift. Continue the conversation on the Facebook group Wake Up Dad. Share this podcast with other dads on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure to subscribe to the show and give us a rating so we can reach more dads. And dads, one last thing. Wake up!